back. So, yesterday I talked about salvaging 18650s and how to charge them. But today I want to talk about those specs that go inside each individual battery. So, first we'll start off with these light green LG HA1s. They are a capacity of 1300 milliamps, charging 1.3 amps max. Standard charging, which is the peak charging that's recommended, or like the optimal, is 650 milliamps. Discharging standard 260 milliamps or max 26 amps. Now, these range quite differently, but if you have anything in between those, it should be okay. But a normal 4 amp and less, depending on battery, is okay. So like these ones, max 26 amps. That's pretty good for a single cell. Moving on. These are INR Samsungs. Capacity of 1300 milliamps as well. 4 amp charge current max. 910 milliamps constant. Discharge is 260 milliamps and max is 15 amps, which is pretty good. These did both come out of Ryobi 40 volt lithium ion battery packs for leaf blowers and lawnmowers and stuff, so that makes sense for the high amp peak rates. Next we have the Panasonic NCR 18650 MH12210, which these are one of my personal favorites because they're cheap if you get them in bulk buy like I did, and for general purpose because 2900 milliamps, 4.2 volts charging, 1.9 amps max, 252.5 volt cutoff, 580 milliamp standard, and 5.4 amp max. So it does have a lower amp max, but it has a higher capacity and charge rating, which is really nice. But the nice thing about these are you put these in parallel, that doubles and that doubles. So basically you can run these at 3 amps continuous, is what I found out from personal experience and specs, and as low as 580 milliamps standard, but you get that really high capacity. So these would be good for like small devices like radio transmitters or RC car, small RC cars with a little 10 amp rate ESC, because I did find out, I didn't put it on here, but they have a maximum peak for 10 seconds of 16 amps for 10 seconds. So basically if it shorts out and you have to grab it, it can survive. But these are the 3 I have the most of, but also what I have is some of these other random ones. If you just look up, you have 2 things you need to look up: brand, this number, and 3 letters depending on what it is. So look up Sony STG, this number. Then you'll find all the specs like I did, 2100 milliamps. Or sometimes if you have no name branding, you can go through a charge discharge setting on here. You can charge up battery, discharge it, and see the total capacity. But you won't be able to figure out the maximum output, sadly. But still good for small electronics. Usually most batteries can do about 2 amps continuous, so that's okay. Samsung batteries. So what I've also found out is, it is 2600 milliamp rating. 26H. I don't know if that's true for some other batteries, but for the ones I figured out, see, this one doesn't have it, but this one does. It says 13Q, 1300 milliamps. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's kind of how they brand some of theirs. Also, I have some Panasonics here. These are older ones, but still good batteries themselves. But sometimes it's harder to find specs on older batteries or batteries with a lot of subgroups. So like these Panasonics, I kept finding, so it's 18650C. I keep finding A, B, D, and G's, but not C's. So I don't know if they just didn't, if those weren't available to the public as easy. But see, you get all these other batteries too. But some batteries that consumers buy, because see, these aren't consumer bought, these are all salvage, so it's a little different. Consumer ones sometimes have the amp rating and the nominal voltage on there, which is nice. And so this one has a button top, those have flat tops. usually what will happen is there'll be a charge controller on them. So like these little guys here, it'll be hooked up to the negative, one will be hooked up to positive. It should be sitting underneath the button right there, so it can help so it doesn't over discharge or overcharge. As you can see, they're a little bit taller than flat tops because of that little charge controller. You can even see kind of where that, it's like a extra bump where some of these ones don't have it up at the top. So that could also be it. Also, I specifically, before I bought these on Battery Hookup, which if anyone's listening from there, I'd love to get sponsorship. Anyway, I looked up in the Ryobi batteries, they could use possibly even more different types of these batteries, but the very similar specifications and amperage readings. While these ones were in a med kit, like those portable computers they have around hospitals and stuff, to power certain electronics. I didn't know, I couldn't find the specs for this, so this was just a lucky to find, but there were so many of these cells for so cheap that even if they're the ones that I did find, it would still be a good cell at 2,000 milliamps and only 8 amps max. So these have a higher capacity but lower discharge, while these have a lower capacity, higher discharge. So these are definitely good if you get a lot of them for small e-bike or e-anything projects. Well, these are also good for small electronics and or small e-bike projects like I'm doing, because these add up with how many you put in parallel. So since I know this rating per cell, what I did on here is figured out how many, all the specs for this. So it's 14.5 amp hours at 5.4 amps per cell max, so that goes up to, since I have 5 in parallel, 25 amps roughly max per row. So 25 max for the entire battery, which it would never get up that high unless there was a short. And it's 36 volts, so that is a pretty decently sized battery pack for the size at 8 inches by 6 inches. Now, some batteries come in packs like these and you don't know what's in them. All you know is a volt, an amp rating, and a watt hour rating. You can usually figure out your amps from the voltage and the watt hours per cell. But sometimes, like that one says it's wrote in 1.5 amps. I wrote that in because I found out what cells these use. But if you don't know what cells you're using, it's kind of difficult to figure it out. But if you do disassemble the battery pack, this is another Ryobi one, you can sometimes, like that, get enough information to figure out what these are. These are 1500 milliamp hour, 20 amp max batteries, but these are completely dead. There's not even a 0.1 of a volt left in them. So that I'm going to have to figure out later. But I just want to give you guys a little understanding of how I know what's going on with these batteries, and how I know how to charge them. So the charging might start at 2 amps, which some of these technically shouldn't have, like this one, but the internal resistance isn't as high. So it'll start up at 2 and then go right down to 1.3, because the charger understands that, because the battery limits itself. It's kind of nice. But some of them, like this one where it's 4 amp max, it wants to stay at 2 amps. And like this one, it's at 1.9, it'll drop down to 1.9 and start charging. So that's it for today, guys. These are just the cells I have in bulk that you guys should know about. And if you want to turn them into RC car packs, companies already did that. WL Toys did it with theirs, so I can already kind of figure out what they have in here. They have two 1500 milliamp hour 18650s, 7.4 volt, 20 amp max batteries, nominal 4 amp max output, which isn't terrible. But what you could do here is take, let's see, you take 2 of these in parallel and 2 of these in series, and you have yourself 2600 milliamp hour battery pack with a max, that'd be like a 62 amp max discharge battery, which is equivalent to a big 2-cell light bulb. So, but you get a higher lifespan than a light bulb with the safeguards. So, you know, up to you guys. Anyway, that'll be it today. I'll see you guys next time.